Kids of back in my day parents, what's the most annoying thing they ranted about? All through my teenage years my mom would get mad that I didn't know how to cook. Or clean something good enough. Or use something correctly, usually gardening tools. Ect. When I was your age I could run my family's B&B single-handed. Double quote. Then when she was done telling me how stupid I was for not knowing, she'd take over and tell me to go away. Thanks for teaching me how to do it right. My dad and uncle's aunt like to rant about how young people don't have any honesty or work ethic. My oldest and youngest uncle made moonshine. My middle uncle stole cars. My dad built moonshine running cars out of the parts, and my aunt ran off with a 50-year-old sugar daddy at 15. It took the car stealing uncle going to jail to straighten them out. My landlord summed it up nicely. You kids would have gotten shot for pulling half the stuff I did at your age. Double quote. It always drove me nuts when my parents would complain about how we never spent any time outdoors. Because back in their day they'd be tramping through the woods at all hours of the night. I wanted to do that. But I wasn't allowed outside. You can't climb trees. Sports are too dangerous. Don't look for bugs, they're gross. Put that stick down. War is not a game. I don't want you playing with that kid. He's weird. It's getting dark. Time to come in. No, you can't play with the big kids. Play with the little ones. Translation. You're now my babysitter. I'm not buying you toys. Use your imagination. Don't play there. You'll get dirty. Hey. Why don't you ever go out and play? The most annoying thing they rant about is us not providing our kids the same life they had. My great-grandparents owned several thousand acres at the turn of the century. They passed down land, heirloom furniture, a thriving farm, etc. The next generation split it all up. Sold a lot of it to start their own business. The next generation the same. The last little plot of that is my mom's acre. Each generation inherited less and less. I will inherit nothing. I got no land to start my family with. Unlike them. No heirloom furniture. No money. Nothing. My family looks down on me and my cousins for struggling. Pretending they worked harder than we do. But they'll never know how hard our generation works for our kids. There's a saying that goes something like this: the first generation works. The second generation maintains. The third generation blows it all away. And the fourth generation works to get it back. And then the cycle repeats with the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and so on generations until there is pretty much nothing left from the first generation. Apparently there was actual tea you could buy for a quarter. Like, great. There's not anymore. What significance does this have to me? Nothing? Thought so. Absolutely love when they completely discount the effects of inflation too. In 1970, a quarter was worth $1.65 in today's money. Having to listen to the getting to school and back stories. I know damn well that you didn't walk 10 kilometers in snow that reaches your waist. Through a forest with wolves and no proper winter boots. We had one pair of shoes to share between the 7 of us. I got them on Thursdays. Double quote. We used to live in one room. All 126 of us. No furniture. Half the floor was missing. We were all huddled together in one corner for fear of falling. My parents always complained that back in their day the kids were always subjected to corporal punishments and were super submissive. They forgot that they already did that to me. They're just complaining that it didn't work that well. Not that they're actually submissive to my grandparents. Basically I have bad parents. And they're bad people. Exact situation I have with my mom's side of the family. Traditional Chinese as FCK. And they think that it helps teach when you nearly beat your kid to death multiple times in a month for not smiling or some shit. My parents love talking about how they were beaten within an inch of their lives by their parents for stuff that I supposedly get away with. One of the most ridiculous ones being holding my chopsticks wrong. Then they talk about how their mother would chase them out the house in the morning and they'd go amuse themselves by being brats around the neighborhood and would only go home once everyone was asleep. My mother would try and claim my siblings and I were lazy because when she was 14 she used to come home from school, walk the dogs, then dance all night. Turned out this translated to she would go out drinking and clubbing underage. My stepdad always rants about me not buying a home when he bought one at 21 years old. He always forgets to mention that it only cost him $22,000. Bet that home is valued at around $100k or more now. Unless it was a shithole or not there anymore. If they're in Australia, that house is now probably valued at well over $1 million. That's not an exaggeration either. Out of date job hunting advice. No mom. Going in every day and demanding to speak to a manager is not more effective than being polite and applying online. Double quote. Dear Lord, you aren't joking. I spent hours applying for jobs online. Hours upon hours, what's that about anyway? Why do you have to reformat your resume 56 times to each individual application? And that you have a job if you got to that damn computer and just went and applied was rage inducing. Getting headaches again just thinking about it. Job hunting. That's great that this worked for you in the 80s, but it's the 2010s. But just go in and apply. Just ask for the manager. That shows initiative. Right. Last time I did this at the insistence of my mother. They told me they don't keep printed applications anymore and to apply online. They were truly baffled that I came inside the store to apply for a job. Got yelled at when I quit a job in college that paid $8 HR. I made $3 an hour when I was your age. I would have killed to make that. Something inflation. Quit after I realized the money I made in a month would barely pay for one of my textbooks. And I was taking 18 credits and didn't have enough time to actually read them. Dad. Back in my day, if your dad made a joke about you and you make one back, he'd take you out back and beat you for disrespect. Me. That doesn't seem respectable. Beating people who you don't like up? Didn't you teach me to not do that? Dad. That was extremely disrespectful and in my day I would have whipped you with my belt for that. Well, they don't mean respect. They mean submissiveness. Car seats. I don't care if you drove around with a baby laying in the front seat of your car. You aren't taking my toddler anywhere without a car seat. This one drives me nuts. Yes. Dad. My baby toddler needs a car seat properly installed in the car. Not just sitting on the backseat floor. No. The straps do not need to be nice and loose so she can wiggle around. No. Those aren't extra buckles. My dad won't be driving her anywhere. Dial phones. They complained about how kids these days, specifically my brother and I, don't know how to use them after forgetting we had one in the house until I was 7. And I know full well how to use one. And yet none of them can operate a telegraph using Morse code. Back in their day, only complete losers had cars in high school. According to them, the cool guys were on the school bus with all the pretty girls. And they told me that shitty with straight faces. I think your parents were losers in high school. You kids get a trophy for everything now. You never learn how to try hard. Yes. When I was a child I got participation trophies. And they felt very patronizing. Also, I was 7. I didn't ask for the damn trophies. It was your generation who was giving them to me. Edit. My first gold and silver for a simple comment like this. Thank you so much, invisible strangers. I threw those participation trophies away so f***ing fast BC, it was so embarrassing. I didn't want them. I didn't walk around saying look at what I won. I hated them. My parents grew up very poor, which has made them very frugal. Growing up I learned a lot about saving money, but there's a difference between being frugal and just being cheap. My parents would use things until they are completely dead. They still had a CRT TV in their living room up until 2013. Growing up it was so hard to try and get my parents to get me new things was so hard. Like I couldn't get new shoes until mine were literally falling apart, and even then we would get the cheapest shoes at Kmart or something. They would always buy the cheapest things possible. Then complain when they would break or fall apart quickly. Even to this day they are still very cheap. My mom's phone is 4 or 5 years old and can't hold a charge, but she refuses to buy a new one. My dad travels for work a lot but still uses a pair of $25 Skullcandy headphones he got years ago on his flights. Their laptops are from 2012 and they complain about them being slow and crashing but refuse to buy new ones. My dad said his laptop crashed last week and he had to completely reinstall Windows and ended up losing an entire day of work. I honestly don't understand it anymore. I live 1,000 miles away from them, so it's hard to keep track of the dumb stuff they do anymore. I should also point out that they make $100K each. Back in my day we didn't have the internet. Dad IDK if you've noticed, but we still don't have internet 90% of the time. It astounds me that in today's day and age of technology where we can send emails to the space station and cruise ships in the middle of the ocean have Wi-Fi, that rural internet is still not even close to reliable. Not my parent but my grandmother, who basically raised me from age 8, likes to say by your age I was married, pregnant and working. What's wrong with you? She misses out the fact she was still living with her parents and her now ex-husband, my bio-grandad, was in prison. I think I'm doing pretty well for myself. I haven't got a job, but I'm not raising a kid that I don't want like most of the people my age in this day and age, and I'm really trying to make a life for myself. Back in my days people weren't that soft and full of emotions because we didn't have so much free time. We were working, and if someone wasn't disciplined they sent them to the military, and that's exactly what your generation needs to get deprogrammed because you guys have way too much time to think about your emotions. My dad said the same shit. Honestly, I'd rather be more in tune with my emotions than repressed 24/7. My father likes to ramble about how back in his day he went to school and also managed to work to provide sustenance to his mom and siblings. I think it's possible to study and work, but you have to be extremely lucky to earn enough to provide for a family these days while also studying. I think American, if you're talking about US, economy has fundamentally changed in the past 40-50 years, and yes, it is nearly impossible to work your way through the studies while also being a bread earner for your family. My dad is always bitching about today's athletes, how they choose money and hold out or don't play while injured. In any other job, you would go where the money is. Why is it you have to be loyal in sports? Sure enough, when KD was sitting out in the finals, he thought you could never get me to sit during the finals, no matter what. Then KD injures himself and I shit you not, he ranted about how you have to be smart about injuries or you just hurt your team. Back in my day, a woman stood by a man, even if he beat the garbage out of her. No. Mom. No. My mom used to tell me that she believed a woman's place was in the home and kitchen, and that she wished women had never fought for the right to vote. She refused to do the majority of cleaning or cooking when I was growing up because she wanted to teach me and my brother how to take care of ourselves. When we moved out, our house went to shit for a while before she remarried, and now my sisters are in the same boat as we were. She blows my mind. Back in my day kids didn't talk back to their parents or give them attitude. If they did they got a good beating. First of all, what you and your parents consider talking back is actually called having any sort of opinion different from yours. And yeah, maybe I do have an attitude. It should be expected. I'm young and stupid, but not so stupid that I can't have a thought of my own. And any attitude I do give you is mostly because my opinions aren't taken seriously and you don't listen to me. Like when if I'm a parent I'd at least explain to my kid why something is wrong. I realize it can get tiring, but there's a certain point where you do actual damage when you just do the because I said so to a 14-year-old over and over again. I was an honor roll student. It isn't that hard. Double quote. My mother, who took arts in high school, never went to college, and arguing with me about how it's not difficult to keep grades up. I'm a physics major. Mom, you don't know anything about what I'm doing. That's when you start explaining things like how acceleration is the derivative of velocity, which is the derivative of position. Or something even more complicated. Pretty much what I did. I started explaining time dilation to her really quickly and asked her to repeat it back to me word for word. Needless to say, she didn't talk to me because I was arrogant and cocky because I was good at science and she wasn't. There is no end to this. I stopped talking to her about how school is going since every time I bring up how hard it is she compares it to her time in school. My grandparents. You can't trust anybody in this world anymore. Back in my day there were no rapes or murders. Everyone was nice and cared for each other. No one hurt each other. First of all, that's a f***ing lie. There were rapes and murders and horrible people back in your day. You just never heard of them because A, they went unreported to the police, B, you didn't have TV and sh*t to report on them, C, you just never paid attention and pretended it didn't exist. My grandma also tries saying stuff like, oh, such and such city is dangerous. You can't ever go there. Any place can be dangerous. There have been murders and huge heroin problems just miles from my house. But the news only likes to report on the exciting problems in exciting areas. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen everywhere. The most annoying thing to me is how my parents complain that nobody, from my community, speaks our native language anymore. They say back in my day, everyone spoke our language and today none of you kids can. Guess what? The adults never taught it. It wasn't used in the homes. So how the FCK are we supposed to learn it? And then I have people from the home country call me and speak and I'm like, you know, I barely understand. I can speak better than my siblings but not that much better. And they yell at me. Don't blame me. Blame my parents. And my parents and my friends' parents, they can all blame themselves and not their children. My grandparents said that to my parents when they were growing up. All my great grandparents are from Poland but immigrated to America in their late teens, early 20s. All of them learned English but generally spoke Polish at home because it was easier. So all my grandparents learned Polish as their first language but quickly learned English as they were in America. But my grandparents stopped speaking Polish as they got older. So my parents along with my aunts and uncles never learned more than a few words of Polish, as my grandparents only spoke it on occasion when they had Polish speaking company over or didn't want their kids to know what they were saying. Then they complained that none of their kids could speak the language even though they never tried to have them learn the language.